Hey guys, it's good to see you again. Today I'm going to talk about skin histology, physiology, and how that relates to permanent makeup. So what is skin histology? Skin histology is a study of skin structure and composition. Skin physiology is a study of its function. Since skin is the canvas for our work, for all of our permanent makeup work, the histology and physiology of the skin are the foundation that we all, as permanent makeup artists, we must all know. And there is much more to performing permanent makeup artistry than just having drawing skills. The skin itself plays a very important role in the final healed outcome of the permanent makeup drawing. What are the main 6 functions of the skin? Protection, sensation, heat regulation, excretion, secretion, and absorption. Skin is the biggest organ of the body, and the main function is to protect the body from foreign substances. With that being said, any implanted substance will be pushed out and cleared out from the skin. And this is one of the challenges of implanting permanent makeup. We're all dealing with the organ that has one of its main functions is to reject our work. The skin consists of 3 main layers: epidermis, dermis, and hypodermis. And each layer has its own function and is made of its own type of skin cells. So here on the picture, you can see that the skin is made of 3 layers, and they're marked as the upper layer is the epidermis. Then you can see the dermis, and underneath is subcutaneous layer, which is also called fat. The epidermis, the upper layer of the skin, is also subdivided into layers: stratum granulosum, stratum spinosum, and stratum basal. And you're probably thinking or imagining that all of these layers are even and that the pigment lies there somewhere like a piece of cake. But in reality, it's not like that. All the layers are uneven, especially the areas in between the basal layer of epidermis and the papillary layer of the dermis. And you can see that on this picture here. You can see what the actual skin looks like under the microscope. You can see how uneven it is. And after you placed pigment particles, they will all lay in different layers in different amounts, and you would be surprised how even the most precise and beautiful work, how it looks uneven under the microscope. But from the distance, it all looks pretty nice and pretty even. And that's what we want. We want for our work to look nice and even in real life. The epidermis, the upper layer of the skin, it continuously regenerates and replaces itself every 4 to 6 weeks. And this is why the pigment has to be placed in the upper layer of the dermis. Younger skin has much faster regenerating cycle. It's approximately 28 days. Usually younger clients, they heal faster, they have less color left after healing, and the permanent makeup doesn't last as long. And the reason for that is because younger people have better metabolism, and all of the processes in their body are just much faster. And those processes, they slow down as we age. And the more mature our client is, the slower they will heal. A mature skin has much longer regenerating cycle. It's 6 to 8 weeks, and it heals very slowly. But on the positive note, it retains pigment very well, and permanent makeup will last a long time. Generally, the older your client, the longer the permanent makeup will last. How I would calculate that, I would say, so it's easier for you. You can take the age of the client and add 10 days. And that will give you the amount of days that that client needs to heal. For example, let's say you have a client who's 40, you add 10 days, that means your 40-year-old client will heal completely in 50 days. Why do we need to know that? That's how long it's going to take for you to see your healed result. So your client should come back for their second procedure after they're fully healed, their age plus 10 days. So for example, you have a client who's 50-year-old, 50 plus 10, that's 60 days. That's going to take 2 months for them to fully heal. And you do need to explain that to your clients. The skin cells and skin color are created in the basal layer of the epidermis. Skin color is called melanin. Melanin is divided into two categories, pheomelanin and eomelanin. Pheomelanin is red and yellow, and eomelanin is dark brown to black. The amount of pheomelanin does not change throughout life. People with light-colored skin mostly produce pheomelanin. People with dark-colored skin mostly produce eomelanin. The amount of eomelanin changes under the sunlight. Eomelanin is our natural sunscreen that protects our skin from natural sunlight. Eomelanin can be overly produced if the skin is damaged and is being exposed to the sunlight. And that is why it is not recommended to have permanent makeup procedure if your client just came back from the beach or is going to be on the sun shortly after the procedure. The skin can respond with hyperpigmentation, which means production of high amounts of eomelanin, or hypopigmentation, which is loss of its ability to produce melanin. And I'm going to give you an example. When I first started years ago, I had a client who had a procedure. I did eyebrows on her, and she went to the beach soon after the procedure, and her skin responded with excess melanin, excess production of dark pigment. So she came back to me, and I looked at her eyebrows, and they looked unevenly. The edges of the eyebrow looked very uneven, brown, and I couldn't figure out what is that, because when I do my work at all, everything looks perfect. And then she started telling me about that she went to the beach, and I realized that is hyperpigmentation. That's what it looks like. So when your client goes to the beach, like you probably know for yourself. You go to the beach, especially if you have darker skin colors. Go to the beach, you have a scratch on your hand, you got a tan, then you notice that scratch becomes a little bit darker. That's what's called hyperpigmentation, overproduction of melanin. Your body responds with too much pigment in the place where it's being traumatized. So your body can respond with overproduction of that dark pigment, and the work will look kind of odd. Or your body can respond also with hypopigmentation, which means that those melanin producing cells can lose their ability of producing that pigment, and the place of trauma can become white. They can have a white spot there. And we don't want that. We don't want that to happen to our clients. So we will always explain to our clients, we'll always talk to them and say that whenever you do this procedure, you should not be on the sun, meaning like laying out, being tan, getting suntan. They should not do it before the procedure, like a week or 2 weeks before, and also maybe 2 to 3 weeks afterwards. They have to be very careful. If they're going to the beach, they need to wear a hat, then they should not be laying on the sun. So that's the hypopigmentation. Oh, and also my students ask me what happens if they get hyperpigmentation. If they get hypopigmentation, will that ever change? Well, yes, there's a possibility it will resolve on its own within a period of 6 months, but sometimes it doesn't. Especially if there's loss of pigmentation, sometimes it doesn't resolve. So we want to make sure that doesn't happen. Okay, next. Under the epidermis lays the dermis. So you understand, first the epidermis. Epidermis always sheds. It always replaces itself. It's constantly shedding. And then we have dermis. Dermis is a very stationary layer, so it never replaces itself. It's there. That's the place where we have all of our blood vessels, small nerves, lymphatic vessels. It's the life of our skin. That's where everything is. It's stationary, and that's where we want to place the pigment, into that upper layer of the dermis. Not too deep, but up at the top. Why there? Because if you going to place it into epidermis, the top layer that sheds every month, your pigment will be gone after 1 month. After your client comes back and they're fully healed, your work will be gone. But at the same time, you have to be careful. You have to make sure that you don't place it too deep into the dermis. Why? Because if you place it too deep, your work will change the color. Your pigment will look grayish. It's going to look, it's kind of like a dirty grayish color, odd, kind of not a nice look. So you have to find that sweet spot. How much pressure do you apply so that your pigment goes into the right layer of the skin, into upper layer of the dermis? And how do you place your pigment into that upper layer of the dermis? What do you need to do? How do you know you're in the right place? So what I always say to my students, first, on the first procedure, you need to work with a lighter pressure. And then when your client comes back for the follow-up, you need to evaluate how much pigment is left, what the color looks like. And if there's not enough pigment, then you can go with a little bit more pressure or place more pigment into the skin. Or if everything looks perfect, then you continue with the same pressure. If the color looks grayish, that means that you went too deep. And unfortunately, your client will have to go through a removal process to correct that bluish color. So that's the reason why when you're learning, you always need to start with a little bit lighter pressure, because here you basically, if you didn't guess right and you place it into the wrong layer of the skin and it sheds and it's gone, then you will pretty much work at the expense of your own time. You'll redo it one more time, you'll go a little bit deeper, but your client will be fine. Versus if you go too deep immediately, then you have to figure out how to correct that grayish looking color that's too deep. And here on the picture, I'm going to show you what too deep looks like. And this is the picture that I'm going to show. This is the picture when I first started out. I don't know if I told you this before or not, but I first started out as a microblader, and I've done that for about a year, and I've made many mistakes. I would not go back to do microblading ever again, but here you can see from my mistakes what too deep means. Too deep immediately. What placing the pigment into the wrong layer of the skin, too deep, looks kind of grayish. So when I say lighter pressure, more pressure, like how do you know? How do you even know what's the lighter, what's the not lighter? I know when you're first starting out, it's kind of a little bit confusing, right? So what I would do when I practice on the skin pads, and we are going to do several exercises to help to control that pressure and understand your hand pressure. What you need to do is you need to separate your pressure into a couple of levels. Level 1, this is how it feels in my hand, and this is how this pressure is. Level 2, level 3, and maybe even level 4. And you just kind of memorize that feeling in your hand of that pressure. What does that feel like? And when your client comes in, because when your client comes in, it's going to take them, some people it takes a month, and then some people it takes 2 months to heal, and by the time they come back, you're not going to remember what pressure you used or what color you used. You always need to write down your client in the chart, in her chart. You need to write down, you need to have all the information, her name, her picture, before picture, after picture, what pressure you used, what color you used. Make sure you keep all that. It's very important that you follow through your own work So it gives you understanding what you did. So you write down, I used pressure number 1 on this client. And then when she comes back, you will look at it and you'll see, okay, I used pressure number 1 and it didn't heal well. So there's nothing left. So this time I'm going to use pressure number 2. So that's how I would do it. After we implant pigment into the skin is being traumatized, and the body will try to heal and get rid of all that foreign substance. And the more time you spend working on that skin with the needle, the more you will traumatize the skin and the more pigment will be pushed out, which will lead to poorly healed results. You can also over-traumatize the skin when you improperly select the needle size to match to the skin type. And I'm going to talk separately about needles and the skin, how to match those properly. But right now I'm going to just say the thicker the skin, the oilier the skin, the thicker diameter of that needle. The thinner the skin, the thinner diameter of that needle should be. And I'm going to talk about that in a separate lesson about the needles. So skin over-traumatized. Your goal is start the procedure. After you open the skin, you have to be very methodical about what you do. You have to complete everything on one side, you went back to the other side, you put the numbing, you do everything, and you try to finish the procedure as soon as possible. Like, you're not rushing through, but you're not sitting there the whole day and trying to overwork it, because what's going to happen, you're going to overwork the skin. If you're working for a very long time, extended period of time, you're allowing your client to talk to you, or, you just kind of like going to the bathroom, doing whatever, after you open the skin, that skin is going to get tired, it's going to be overworked, and as a result, it's going to push out all your work. And when the client comes back, that's another reason why the pigment heals too light, is because you over-traumatize the skin. So sometimes the pressure can be correct, but because you worked too long, or you chose the wrong needle, you over-traumatize the skin, so the body will push out all that pigment. And here I'm going to speak a little bit about how can we use that to our advantage. That knowledge of over-traumatizing the skin, how can we use that to our advantage? You can, when you work, and you're going to make mistakes. That's normal. You're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. We all make mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes. I'm sharing with you what not to do, my mistakes, but you'll still make them, and that's fine. So your client will come in and maybe you put the pigment a bit too deep, right? Especially at the arch of the eyebrow. You place the pigment a bit too deep and you see that it healed kind of grayish and you don't like it. So what do you need to do? You take your needle empty with no pigment in, and you just work over that area. You make sure that your needle will penetrate to where that pigment lays and to that layer. Wherever you went, the needle has to go in there. You just traumatize it. You go over 1, maybe 2, 3 passes, traumatizing the skin, so it's going to push out that pigment. So that's how we're going to use it to our advantage. It's called dry needling. It's a little bit of an advanced technique, and but I do teach my my students how to do that, because I think it's you need to know how to correct your own mistakes. So dry needling, traumatizing the skin in those places where you want to remove the pigment and then let it heal. Anything that gets into the dermis will stay there forever. Some trapped pigment particles will change, some will be destroyed over time by UV light, some will be taken out by the body, but some will remain there forever. Dermis changes all the time. It's constantly being restored by the body like all other tissues of the body. And that's why over time, pigment will fade out, hair strokes will spread, pigment will move. The deeper the pigment, the harder it is to remove it with laser, because the laser beam loses its energy while penetrating through deep layers of the skin. It's easier to remove freshly done permanent makeup because over time that pigment falls deeper and deeper into the skin. And how does the laser remove that pigment? What it does, it explodes. The laser beam, when it penetrates the skin, it explodes those large particles of the pigment into the smaller pieces that can be easily cleared and absorbed by the body, by the immune cells. And also another reason why does the pigment spread over time is because our body is made 70% of water. So let's say you create those perfect hair strokes with microblading or with the nano strokes, eventually they will spread out because we are made of water. But if you do nice work, if you use the right pigment, it will kind of evenly fade out, spread out, and it'll still look very natural. So you don't have to worry about that. It will still look nice. And yes, we have, I'm going to say one more thing, we have these little cells in our body. They're called phagocytes. They're immune cells that constantly circulate in our blood and our body, and they look for those particles, things that don't belong to our body, and they actually eat them. They absorb them and they remove them from our body. So that pigment that you place in over time, it's going to be eaten up by those little white cells. Some of that pigment is going to be destroyed by the UV light. If your client goes to the beach, they get sunburn or something, that pigment, their eyebrows are going to be really, really faded fast. A lot of the color is going to be killed. Also, if your client gets a lot of chemical pills, any type of exfoliating procedures, lasers, use of retin-A, use of acidic products like glycolic acid in their lotions and things, anything that makes them look nicer and prettier over time, like younger, more youthful, is not good for the eyebrows because it helps to restore that skin, exfoliate that skin, and that's going to exfoliate that pigment in it as well. So just that for you to know. I always explain that to my clients. I always say it. You can also print out some kind of a card so you don't have to repeat yourself all the time to your clients. You can just have all that information in one place that you can just give out so that everybody everything is has a structure. Your work has a structure. Before and after all the information your clients need to know is on some kind of a piece of paper. Yes, I say to my clients, be careful. When you place your lotions and things, don't put it on your eyebrows. When you go to the beach, make sure you put some sunscreen on your eyebrows, or you wear a hat if you want them to last longer. Also, some pigments, we're going to talk about pigments. Some pigment types will last longer than others in the presence of sun. We'll talk about that later. And the third layer of the skin is the hypodermis, or is also called subcutaneous fat. That is the cushion layer of the skin that acts as an insulator. We, as permanent makeup artists, we don't work with the hypodermis, so we don't talk about it. The skin layers nerves, glands, hair follicles, with all their functions. They all harmoniously work together to protect and to regulate the body. And unfortunately, the biggest function of the skin is to reject our work. And that's the reason why we always talk to our clients after we do the procedure. We always tell them not to sweat afterwards, not to get the eyebrows or lips, not to get wet. We tell them not to pick on those scabs. Why? We want to protect our work, not to do anything extra, because the skin is still going to push out a lot of our work. It's going to heal a lot later, so we don't want to do anything extra, like to add water there or to pick on that, so that client has better result. And I'm going to tell you a couple of facts about the skin that I don't know if you know or not. The thickest skin on our body is located on the palms of our hands and the soles of our feet, because we have extra layer of the skin. It's called stratum lucidium. We have an extra layer of that epidermis. And the thinnest layer is on the eyelids. It's 1.5 millimeters on the eyelids, and it's 4 millimeters on our feet and our palms of our hands. So yes, the skin thickness changes throughout the body, and not just that, it changes on our face. The thickness of the eyebrow, the skin of the eyebrow changes starting from the middle of the face to going outwards. The thickest skin is going to be towards the nose, and the thinnest skin is going to be towards the arch, going to the temple. So as you're going to be working, you're also going to change your pressure. You're going to use the lighter pressure here on the arch and on the temple, and you're going to use slightly more pressure when you move towards the nose. And of course, I'm going to show you all that when we do our practice work, but that's what you need to know. Anyways, I enjoyed our lesson today. I hope you enjoyed it as well. I hope it was informative to you, and I will see you in our next lesson.